Hi there, my name is Mason Wilder, and welcome to the ACFE's Fraud Talk podcast. Today I'm joined by Marta Cadavid, CFE, and founder of NoFraudLatin, which is an analytics firm that specializes in Latin America. But Marta will talk more about the company a little bit later. Marta, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Manson. Thank you so much for this wonderful invitation to be here talking about an important topic and to share this wonderful information with all of our audience, the certified fraud examiner, and all of these people who are learning with this code.
Right. Well, so a little bit of background for the audience. I've worked with Marta on a couple things. Most recently and most specifically, she was a moderator for our Latin America fraud examinations panel at our recent Global Fraud Conference. One of the areas of interest I have at the ACFE is emphasizing the Latin America region in our membership, and Marta has helped me do that with the panel and now this podcast. And I look forward to working with her and other Latin American CFEs in the region to develop the tools that professionals in that region need. So, Marta, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of your background and experience?
Well, I am from Colombia, living in the beautiful city of Chicago, and I am a CPA and I'm an accountant, and I love finance. I have my bachelor's degree in finance as well. And then once I know about economic crime, I became so passionate about it. So that's why one of my goals to come to the United States was to become a certified fraud examiner. I am an anti-money laundering specialist too, and also a certified human trafficking investigator. And also I have other certifications based on the Latin American market as well. I love my career, Mason. I love to be a freedom fighter. I think this is part of my life. I am blessed just to work and to do all of these things every day. And also, I am the CPO of NoFraudLatin, as you mentioned before, is a company that works with fraud analytics. Since 12 years, I have been working as a fraud investigator and helping auditors and compliance officers to understand fraud and unethical behavior.
All right. And, one of the things when we were working on our panel for the Global Fraud Conference, one of the things that you mentioned to me, which is part of the reason why we're doing this podcast today, is that you had developed a kind of Latin American specific version of the ACFE fraud tree. And so for our listeners, I'm sure many people are familiar with our fraud tree, which is kind of like a classification or taxonomy of different types of occupational fraud. Before we get into your Latin American fraud tree, Marta, why don't you talk a little bit about why there would need to be a kind of adapted version of something like that for the Latin America region?
Well, I am so grateful that the association put together all of these materials globally. But we need to understand that each region is different. So the concept of the fraud tree was to classify the different occupational fraud in general. But when we translate this fraud tree to the Latin American context, it was a little weird. It doesn't match exactly what is happening in Latin America. And the other part is that it's a little dense. So that's why I decided to take the ACFE tree and put it in the Latin American context. Okay. And then, in fact, add more value to our auditors and fraud investigators. So that's why today I have my own pro tree, which is very famous now. And it's amazing because I put everything together in a spreadsheet, very simple in Excel. And now many corporations are using this pro tree to create tools to have, for example, a checklist or to understand project corporation. So it's getting more popular. But it's important, Mason, that we understand that we had to embrace this kind of tools, but also we need to adapt then what we are living. The other part is that the way that we conceive fraud in Latin America is a little different because the fraud tree was conceived more for the legal perspective here in the United States. In Latin America, we cannot see this legal perspective because sometimes there are some kind of activities that they are not in our legal codes, for example, or we cannot go to the securities just because somebody was stealing something from their credit card. No. But anyways, this new tree from Latin America help us to classify fraud in a better way, to create a better policy, to have better matrices for our company, and in fact to create KPIs.
Well, that's all very wonderful and interesting. And so I know you mentioned a couple of examples of ways that it has been applied, but can you talk about in some of the different legal definitions and legal terminology in Latin America? Can you give me maybe one specific example of something that's different in your Latin American fraud tree compared to the ACFE fraud? I'll also mention that you can reach out to either me or Marta after this podcast if you're interested in a copy of the Latin American fraud tree.
Well, let's start about language. So when we translate what we had in the fraud tree that was created by ACP, if we translate everything to Spanish, there are things that they are not the same. The names are totally different. That's why when you see, for example, skimming in Spanish sounds totally different. So we call this with another name. Or in the fraud tree, you can see different kind of classifications, but when we put everything in Spanish, it's almost the same. Okay. So what I did was to translate everything and to put these names, with the right concept that we use in Spanish, not only in Latin America. It's more about the terminology in Spanish. So language is the first factor and challenge. And the second challenge or example was, if you can scroll down a little bit, is the misappropriation of assets. So the fraud tree, the original one, keeps together cash and inventory. And it's good. And in fact, a payroll. That's fine. But for us, it's too much information. And so when people are committing fraud in these areas, let's call areas or concepts, the fraud could be a little different. So what I did was separate misappropriation of assets. So everything that happens with cash, everything that happens with inventory and payroll. So that's why my fraud tree has 5 branches, let's call it that way: corruption, misappropriation of cash, inventory, payroll, fraud with financial statements, and obviously cybercrime. So that's why you can see everything more organized. And as you can see here in the spreadsheet, there are other concepts regarding how can you commit fraud there, for example, with documents or with through people. So it helps to understand each concept more easier.
Yeah, and I think I really like that you included some of the cybercrime stuff in here as well. One of the things that I've been thinking about or considering figuring out the right way to do is maybe kind of either expand our ACFE fraud tree or develop a kind of supplemental separate one that is just for external fraud rather than as a point of clarification for those in the audience, the ACFE fraud tree primarily relates to occupational fraud, which at least some part of that will involve an insider, whether they're colluding with somebody externally or not. The occupational fraud generally involves some kind of inside element. But as many people in the audience will know, there's much more fraud that occurs in many different types of external fraud.
Yes.
But yes, I've even had conversations with other people about maybe even developing a specific cyber fraud tree or cyber fraud classification system. But I think it's very impressive the work you've done with this Latin American fraud tree, and I know it's not an easy undertaking, and it's difficult to try and develop a system that will provide some kind of classification for any type of fraud that might occur. So kudos to you for doing this. And
Thank you.
um, can you talk a little bit about, the process for when you developed this? And I mean, were you consulting with other people in the field in different countries in Latin America, or just going
Well,
based off your own experience?
well, I love the institute. The ACP for me, first of all, was my professional goal many years ago, and now I feel so proud to be a member, a certified pro examiner. So I use the material a lot. So since my main context is Latin America, in order to put all of this material in Spanish, I had to study. Okay, so first of all, I studied the manual to be a certified law examiner. It was about 1,800 pages.
Yeah, I think it's gotten
Le-
longer since then.
oh, okay. So it was like the first part to understand to be a certified law examiner. So then I say, okay, I need to understand what the country is. On but these things are not the same in Latin America. So I was more curious about it. So I started to create all of this material. So little by little, I became an international consultant for many firms, and I started to teach it. So to teach something like a default tree for Latin America, I don't want to copy and paste the same thing that you have guys here in the United States and then provide this information in this way. No, we need a different statements. We need a different way to see fraud in Latin America. That's why I did it. But I had to be clear, Mason, too, is that some people say, there is another way to, for example, to commit fraud in the banks with loans. Oh, okay, let's add it. So some people, when I am teaching, when I am training auditors and compliance officers, they gave me another ideas or some ideas to improve the fraud rate. And as I mentioned it before, Mason, some corporations use this spreadsheet or have been using this spreadsheet to create other internal tools. So now my second challenge was to translate the fraud risk management. Do you remember the book when we had the book? I had the book here close to me, but I don't want to interrupt the podcast. So
Sure,
the
yeah.
fraud risk management, when it was a book, I did the same thing. I translated and I create more tools for my Latinos, auditors that work and fraud investigators that need these tools in Spanish. So it has been a journey, but I'm very happy doing this because we can provide this material. We can take it from the original resource, which is the source, which is ACP, and put it in the context for Latin America. Obviously, letting people know that it belongs to ANFIC or the Internal Auditors Institute or
Sure. And I think the mission of the ACFE is very similar to your mission in that we just want to help people that are anti-fraud professionals have the tools that they need to better protect their organizations against fraud and detect fraud and investigate fraud. And you mentioned a couple different things in your professional career that led to the development of this and the expansion of it and new ideas through training and doing international consulting. And all of that path that you've been on, all those things that you've done have kind of led to this company that you've created and that you're, the founder of. So tell me a little bit about that company, how this Latin American fraud tree, plays into it and the different things that No Fraud does.
So this is amazing, Mason, because we love the fraud triangle. We love everything that Donald Tracy did for us. I think we are the number one fans of Donald Tracy. And then we put the fraud triangle in a methodology, in a software to provide, to give value to the company. How we do that is we monitoring human behavior and through the fraud triangle analytics. We use artificial intelligence to monitor communications using the minimum resources, and we understand semantic information, so the communications, to anticipate how people behave. So at the beginning, 12 years ago, we thought that it was only for fraud and corruption. Then we moved forward with abuse. And one day we say, how about if we use more structured artificial intelligence and put something that gives more value? And then we can see compliance violations and then toxicity in companies or violence in the workplace. So nowadays, we don't talk only about fraud. We talk about human behavior or unethical behaviors. So everything is done with artificial intelligence. And as I mentioned before, we monitoring the human behavior through communication.
And so you do this monitoring in both English and Spanish.
Yes.
Are there
So
any other languages that you're looking to add in there at some point?
So in order to understand how people behave, we create the largest human behavior database. So we had more than 100,000 expressions in English and Spanish. And then we are close to work with Portuguese. Everything depends on the market. So we are able to monitor people speaking in both languages, English and Spanish, and in fact, in the combination that is very common called Spanglish. So we understand very well the cultures in the countries, how people talk, for example, in Colombia, Peru, and Chile, and Mexico, but and also the different parts in the United States. And in addition, we understand how people talk in the trading floor, in treasury, in accounting, in the different areas of the corporation, because we use different, how can I say, language, different expressions in each department. We understand that part. So because when people commit the fraud, they don't say, hey, let's commit fraud. No, they talk in a funny way. They try to hide the bad or the unethical behavior with some expressions that we are able to understand. So through artificial intelligence in both languages, plus understanding the both languages, we can see these expressions in real time. So Mason, at the beginning, we thought about prevention and detection. Nowadays, we can talk about prediction. So that's the point. We can predict when somebody has pressure, when is looking for the opportunity, or when it's justifying an unethical behavior. So we don't need to wait until the person commit fraud.
Well, that's pretty impressive. And so you mentioned over 100,000 phrases that are kind of mapped. Are they each connected to different elements in your fraud tree so that when one of those terms pops up, you get like an indicator of a particular type of fraud that could be occurring or might be likely to occur?
Yes, it's amazing because each expression is connected with the fraud triangle theory, opportunity, rationalization, and pressure. And also, we can provide what kind of fraud the person is committed or what kind of behavior. This could be, for example, corruption, but what kind of corruption, okay? Or a misappropriation of cash, of inventory, or is something related to cybercrime. Okay? So we have the classification too. So we match it both, which is amazing because in our reports, we are able to provide information about the alerts, for example, the expression, when the alert occurred, who triggers the alert, and also what kind of behavior and what kind of risk, and also the probability that this event or alert is suspicious of something.
That is really cool stuff that you guys are doing. Can you give me an example? You talked about people don't just say, like, I would like to commit fraud, or how would you like it if I paid you a bribe? Give me an example, one in Spanish and then one in English, of a way that people might refer to a fraud in just kind of funny language.
Before to provide examples, it's interesting. It's good to explain that when people work on operations, they don't talk a lot. They go straight to the point. This is I need this money. I'm going to pay later. Nobody's going to know about this. But as long as the person is claiming the ladder in the company, they talk more. They try to hide the information. So it's very common, for example, to use the petty cash for personal gains, for example, to pay the expenses, personal expenses. So they say, for example, I'm going to pay this with my net payroll. Nobody's going to know about this. Nobody, don't tell anybody. The auditor is stupid. It sounds bad, but talking that way. And then if we are talking about C-levels or higher people in the corporation, they use a different language. For example, delete the formula in the spreadsheet, and nobody's going to know about this. The auditor is going to be there tomorrow. Please don't tell about the mistake. That's very common. We see another labor harassment, insult. It's common to read insult or sexual harassment too. And in Spanish, for example, we have somebody asking like this. I'm going to switch to Spanish. Oye, nos podemos robar esas canetas sin que nadie se dé cuenta. ¿Cuánto vale el proyecto? Si vale más de 200 millones, nadie se va a dar cuenta. So in English is, hey, we can steal the cans of oil and nobody's going to know because the project is really high and say nobody's going to know about it. So it's very interesting how people communicate. And we have any kind of alerts every day related to fraud, corruption, compliance violation, and violence in the workplace.
So you've talked about how it started off with just kind of fraud and corruption and then has expanded to, and you mentioned, I know you say you've got a certification related to human trafficking investigation, and you've talked about how you've got now parts in your system built for, compliance, violence, harassment, all those different things. Are there any other areas of monitoring that you are looking to add, or different industries that you're looking to target with this? Just give us an idea of what you're working towards, or what a next step for your company might be?
Mason, unfortunately, each company has different problems. I call this the skeletons. Many companies decide to take the skeletons out of the closet because they are tired of them. But there are the companies that are still collecting skeletons until one day the closet is not big enough for them. The problem is not the methodology, not the Fraud Explorer, no any tool in the world. It's how when the company is going to make the decision to take the skeletons out. That's the problem. So our methodology, our software, our technology fits in any corporation. So it's not on a specific target. For any corporation, we can implement a methodology to find any kind of unethical behavior. But the question is when? When? So despite we have more than 100,000 experts, we target more than 28 departments in the corporation. We are able to incorporate more information if it's needed. Okay. One of the biggest challenges, for example, is the trading. So when we talk about trading floors, okay, because they are highly regulated, they use expressions that are really very difficult. But if there is another industry or department more complicated or complex than the trading floor, we can incorporate it. There is not a problem for that. But the question is when the company is going to make the decision.
Sure. And this is all really super interesting stuff, and I'm, definitely going to, be interested in following along your journey and the company's journey. But I wanted to, just for my own personal curiosity's sake and my own entertainment, as somebody who is very interested in Latin America and always has been, what is something that you think people that aren't from Latin America, or maybe don't have the exposure to Latin America, get wrong about Latin America and Latin Americans?
Oh, so I think Latin America is another animal with different, it's like a zoo with different areas. Because the complexity of our countries and because our regulations in different places makes it Latin America more complicated to work. So that's why when we are able to understand what happens in Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Chile, and Argentina, when we are able to navigate in those places, we become more important for the Latin American market. So I think we are key negotiators. I think we can help to many companies in the United States and in the world to understand Latin America and bring business to Latin America. I know it's not that easy. I know, but keep in mind that we have smart people in Latin America. They have been working a lot. They have been studying a lot, training a lot to articulate businesses in Latin America for the rest of the world. So we had horrible corruption cases to talk. We know fraud very well. We know him very well. Many cases, many types of unethical behavior that happen here. So we have a lot of experience. Not only for the bad, I think it's for the good.
Well, thank you so much, Marta, and thank you for all the audience for your time, for tuning in. You can find either Marta or myself on LinkedIn, or through the ACFE. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions you have. And thank you all for listening. You can find this episode and other episodes of Fraud Talk anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple, acfe.com, Spotify, iTunes, This has been Mason Wilder for the ACFE, signing off.